Hello, my name is Roy Mathena, and I am the Chief Instructor for PSI Project Management. The seminar today is Introduction to Agile Project Management. Now, in today's environment, we use Agile Project Management, and we don't realize that we're using it. So, what is Agile Project Management? That's what we want to define today. We have been around now for 21 years. Hard to believe, but we have. And we focus on project management training, including corporate courses where we do courses for corporations. And we also do open enrollment courses where anyone can sign up for those courses. I've been around for a few years, 30 plus years in project management alone. And even before then, I had various careers. I was in aviation for a number of years and things like that. And so I did a lot of consulting and different things over the years. So I have a fairly broad experience, not only in project management, but overall. Types of projects. Now, there are several types of projects. We have predictive, which is called traditional or waterfall project management. We also have what's called iterative and incremental. Now today our focus is going to be on Agile project management. So Agile, the requirements are established frequently during delivery, and we deliver frequently. We deliver value to the customer as quickly as possible. And we incorporate change real time, and key stakeholders are really involved with the project continuously. And then risk and cost are controlled as requirements and constraints emerge. So first of all, types of projects, and we're talking about Agile. Now, Agile includes and integrates both iterative and incremental project management. So what is iterative? First of all, iterative, I have an idea. The idea is I need to capture ideas that might change. So you can see, first of all, we have a chalkboard that we might use to actually capture those ideas. We feedback and adapt based on this chalkboard. So then we come up with a notepad and a pencil. We'll capture our ideas there. All right, so that is feedback and adapt, and then we go to the computer. We capture ideas there, feedback and adapt, and then we end up with a smartphone. That's where we end up. So iterative, we're trying different ideas to clarify scope and the requirements for the project. Then we have what's called incremental. We progressively develop features and functions and deliver them to the customer. So we have a vision of a house. So first of all, we build the foundation to the house. Then we review that foundation and we feedback and adapt. Then we frame the house in. Again, we walk through the house and perhaps we go in and we move some walls and closets and different things like that. So we feedback and adapt. So that would be when the house is framed in. Then we close the house in, install the windows and doors and things of that nature. Once again, we feedback and adapt. Then we deliver the final product, which is the house that we had envisioned to begin with. So again, this makes up Agile. Agile is both iterative and incremental. And in fact, we include iterative and incremental in predictive types of projects, predictive or traditional types of projects as well. So Agile Manifesto. Now there are 50 plus different Agile methods out there. Back in the mid-90s, this group of people that you see at the bottom got together and they were trying to standardized some aspects of Agile, areas where they agreed on the different methods. So they came up with this. They said individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Of course, in a predictive traditional environment, we use a lot of processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. And of course, in traditional predictive project management, we use a lot of documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiations. And then responding to change over following a plan. Now, in predictive traditional, we have a plan. We follow that plan. We negotiate contracts, okay? So Agile takes on a different approach. There is value in the items on the right, but they said we value the items on the left more. In the early days, and even up until recently, we considered Agile to be a software development method. Agile in its totality was a software development method. Today we use Agile in many different types of projects. So change that focus then from working software to working deliverable. And it was more applicable today because that's what we do in project management. Now, out of those 4 items, there were 12 principles that was developed, and that's called the Agile Manifesto. Now, I'm not going to read these to you, but just to call to your attention a couple of points here. Satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery. Welcome changing requirements. Deliver software frequently. Build projects around motivated individuals. For Agile to work, you have to have motivated individuals because everything is done in a team environment. The team is self-organized. The team provides the task that's to be done. The team does everything. They deal with issues. They make decisions. Then, working software is the primary measure of progress. In other words, whatever it is we're working on, that is what we're measuring the progress on. So once again, let's turn these two around to what we use today. Deliver working deliverable frequently, and working deliverable is the primary measure of progress. We want to also maximize the amount of work not done. To me, that is really, really important. If I don't need to do it, why do I do it? If it doesn't bring value, why do I do it? I don't need to. So we maximize the amount of work not done. And we talked about the self-organizing teams. And then item number 12 is also important. Reflect on how to become more effective. So at the end of each iteration, we will do what's called a retrospective. We will review the work that we did in that iteration, and we will make recommendations and changes, and we will incorporate those changes into future iterations that we complete. You could say that's lessons learned, and we apply lessons learned, and that would be a true statement. Some of the characteristics of Agile. We mentioned that it's team-led. The team does everything in Agile. The team is normally full-time to an Agile project. An Agile project is based on a story. All right, based on a story. We tell a story, and we'll look at this in a minute, and then that will become what our project is going to be based on. We create a prioritized backlog of items to be completed. So we develop a product backlog. This product backlog has user stories in it, and it tells us what we're going to be delivering to the customer. We focus on delivering value to the customer, and we want to deliver that value as soon as possible. And we may do what's actually a small incremental releases. Now, sometimes we are looking at a project and there's a part of it that we don't understand. Maybe we've never done that part before. Maybe we're concerned about risk. Anything associated with that. It's complex. So we might do what's called a spike. If there's too many unknowns. A spike is something that we would do very quickly, and we would do it to be testing our theories and our concerns and the potential impacts and so forth. So a spike would be done very, very quickly to determine the way that we're going to move forward from this point on. Now, in Agile, the customer is going to be involved. They may actually be in part of the team itself. As a matter of fact, we have a role on the project that's called product owner. The product owner is typically the customer or the customer representative. Frequent meetings. We have daily stand-up meetings. In those daily stand-up meetings, we will talk about three things. The team comes together at that team meeting. First thing they talk about is what I did yesterday, what I'm going to do today, and what my impediments are. It's a quick meeting, no more than 15 minutes, and it's a very structured meeting that we go into. All right, then we have changes that are welcome. If anyone, the customer, the team members, or anyone wants a change, then they would bring that change in. It would be analyzed by the product owner, and in coordination with the team, they would implement that change perhaps in the next iteration. Problems are solved, decisions are made by the team. Everything in Agile is team focused. You do not have a project manager per se, but you may have a coach, you may have a servant leader, and you may have a project manager by title, but in Agile that role would be different than it is in a traditional type of a project. Some of the elements of Agile. We start off with a vision statement. That vision statement is going to provide for us the business needs. You could say that vision statement is going to be the elevator pitch that we will use to sell the project itself. User stories. User stories describe what the project is to deliver from the customer's perspective. Then we have iterations. And in each iteration, we will have a group of user stories that are prioritized by what will provide the most value to the customer the soonest. And then we will execute those iterations. And at the end of each one of those, we will deliver value to the customer. Now, you see the word sprint or iteration. Use those words interchangeably. They are really interchangeably. Sprint is a Scrum term, which is a method of project management. Sprint is typically going to be time boxed, meaning I have to have this iteration completed within a certain number of weeks, usually somewhere around 1 to 8 weeks. That iteration has to be completed by the end of that week period that has been time boxed for it. The backlog we talked about is the prioritized list. That's what we're working on. That is the user stories that we are executing. Iteration planning. This is one of the very few planning events that we do in an Agile project. Basically, in an iteration planning, we will plan that iteration, what stories go into it, and what value we're going to be delivering, and so forth. Very, very brief planning session. Then we have what's called a release plan. The release plan defines when usable sets will be delivered. In other words, we're laying out the project and we're declaring and defining when we will be releasing certain attributes to the customer. And then we have that retrospective that I mentioned earlier. We review the iterations and we're looking at really continuous improvement, lessons learned. What can I do better the next time in the next iteration? And that's what we're going to be basically looking at in that case. Some other Agile elements would include estimating. Now, in Agile, things are more abstract. So our estimating tools, and we'll talk about those in the next slide, are very abstract, very relative. In Agile, we have what we call this information radiator. We don't have reports in Agile. We have the information radiator. Now, this is something that will be posted in a highly visible area or online, and it would have all of the information concerning this project and the progress of this project. As I said earlier, Scrum Master, Coach, Servant Leader, they are all tenets of Agile. And they are not there to manage, rather they are there to support the team and help the team as they are needed. Some of our measurements in Agile include what's called a Burndown chart, which reports the work that remains to be done, and a Burnup chart, which reports the work that has been completed. Another tenet is T-shaped skills. In Agile, we want generalists. We don't want specialists, but we want generalists. We want people that can do multiple tasks, multiple skills. So the T crossbar would be their breadth of knowledge. We want someone that has a wide breadth of knowledge. The vertical bar, to that T, would be their depth of knowledge. And obviously, we want someone that has a very, very strong depth of knowledge. So we plan an iteration. That iteration is planned for 4 weeks, let's say. The team will determine what stories go into that iteration, and then they will commit to completing that iteration within 4 weeks. So that is the time-boxed effect that we talked about a little bit earlier. Now, the tools that we use in Agile are things like t-shirt sizing. It's a relative sizing method, relatively sizing. So we compare using extra large, large, medium, small, extra small, and so forth. And we will basically establish relative sizes of one story to another story. That's what we're doing here in this. Then we have planning poker. Planning poker, we have some cards, and we are going to have the Fibonacci numbers on those cards. And then everybody on the team will vote on the different stories to determine which is most important, and perhaps even to establish the amount of time that each of these will take. And that's so estimating that relative size once again. Story pointing is another relative measurement. And we use the Fibonacci sequence to establish the level of complexity of a feature. And each individual will assign story points to each story to determine which one is the most important, the most complex, and to establish a time for those. Now, velocity. Velocity is a measurement of the team's work that has moved from one stage to another stage over a certain time. It's an average, basically. So obviously, when I start off measuring the velocity, I am going to have a lot of inaccuracy at the beginning because I don't have much data. But as I complete more and more iterations, now I am establishing an overall average, and I'm going to use that overall average to help me estimate the velocity of future iterations. And it will establish, it can become very, very accurate over a period of time. We talk about throughput. That would be the measure of the work that has moved from one stage to another over a given time period. Cycle time, measurement of work that has progressed all the way from the plan to completed or to delivered. And then relative sizing is just a mechanism for sizing different items relative to each other. So you can see a lot of these are subjective. A lot are or really abstract in trying to establish. But these are the measurement tools, the estimating tools that we use in Agile, and they are used, believe it or not, quite successfully. But if you look at these tools, for example, you can see where the team is really going to be critical in assessing and establish the times and so forth that it will take to complete iterations or to complete a project. Now, I had a student here, actually it's been a couple of years ago, and this student was very familiar with Agile. And he told me, he said, we planned a project in Agile. That project was to take 12 months. He said, here we are 5 years later, and that project is still going on. That is one of the potential problems with Agile. That is why you want to do these estimating. That is why you want to have a well-defined definition of done so that you do not continue on with a project forever. That is just not productive, and it's just not the way that you should manage projects. So all projects should be controlled and estimated, even in Agile projects. We talked about velocity, for example, and we talked about averages and how the averages are, okay? So you can see, given a period of time and several iterations, we can come up with an accurate velocity for our backlogs. Now, the backlog and time box backlog are basically the same thing. The difference is that this would be a continuous approach where you finish one, you move to the next, and so forth, whereas this is an iteration that has a definite time set on it, okay? It has a definite time set. This one has to be done in 2 weeks, this one in 1 week, 2 weeks, and so forth. And we also have the comparison of the numbers of user stories that we have completed in it. And so you can see that our average here would be somewhere around 1.9 weeks. Now this is iterations. How about stories? How long will it take you to do stories? Okay? How long does it take to do stories? And so given the complexity of each story, once again, if you measure them over time, you can actually set a velocity for how long it will take you to complete stories. So what does that do? Once you establish this velocity for user stories, then that will help you to understand in either the iteration backlog or the time box backlog how many user stories you can list in there and how long it should take you to do that particular iteration. So everything is going to be working together here. And this is a good assessment tool. It will work out. It will be good over a period of time. But if I've only done 1 or 2 iterations or 1 or 2 stories, not so accurate, is it? But over time, it will become more and more accurate. Agile Decision. So the fist of 5. We use the fist of 5 to reach agreement. Of course, a closed fist means that we are in complete disagreement. An open fist says that we are in complete agreement, and we can vote independently in between numbers to show our level of agreement with that particular item we're voting on. Roman voting. This is a simple yes or no. Thumbs up, we're in agreement. Thumbs down, we're in disagreement. Sideways, we're neutral. Polling. In polling, we hear opinions. Everybody contributes. They contribute their opinion, and then we vote on it. Dot voting. Everybody has an equal number of dots, okay? And they will allocate these dots to the highest preference that they have with regards to the stories. And then consensus. Consensus is certainly preferred through collaboration, and basically everyone agrees in a consensus decision. So these agile decisions really help us in our projects to determine what we're going to include, what we're not going to include, and so forth. Now, our first step in any agile project, and really our first step in any project, regardless of the method, is the product vision. The product vision. So this is a clear vision of the desired objectives of the project. And it also establishes how the project vision aligns with the goals. Now, the team is the steward of this vision. The vision might include the product or solution description, intended users, key desired objectives, what differentiates this deliverable from the competitive approach, and then key features and key benefits. So why are we making this? Who's it for? What makes it different? And this vision statement is going to provide clarity on why this product is to be developed, why it should exist. Now, the team is going to take this vision, and not only are we going to create our product backlog from it, but this is the vision that we will be selling to people. In other words, senior management, whomever it may be. We will use this vision to get buy-in from people that this project is really needed. So we have a format here that you can go into and you can use. First of all, we are developing this product for. Who are we developing this product for? Okay. I am developing this product for my bank customers to respond to the following needs. And we will be very specific. What needs is this product going to address? Then we go another step further. This product responds to those needs by providing ABC. It will provide those things that we need in our business or for this project to be satisfied. All right? And then why will customers buy this product? Why will they buy it? They will buy it because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread or whatever it may be. But they will buy this product, okay? And this differentiates us from perhaps even our competitors. So that is the product vision itself. So here is a more descriptive slide talking about the product vision. The product vision is the first stage in an agile project. It's your elevator pitch, a quick summary, and we use this to communicate and to gain support for our project. Now here's a template, and this follows that form we just looked at. We are developing this product for, in other words, who is the target customer? To respond to the following need. What is the need or the opportunity, basically, that we're responding to? The product responds to those needs by providing the following. And then the customer will buy this product because. Okay, that looks good. That sounds good, doesn't it? But what is an example of that? So here is an example on the very bottom. We are developing this product for our bank customers, so they will be able to view their online account status using the online banking application, which will provide them anytime access to their accounts and allow them to access banking features online. This application will allow 24-hour banking service as compared to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. service allowed by comparable banks. I now have a vision. So now I'm going to take that vision and I'm going to create user stories. User stories are simple sentences, and they're always told from the user's perspective. So the template says, who are we building it for? wants to, what is it they're trying to achieve. So if I take that product vision and I just break that down, I decompose it down, you'll see these user stories will be as a result of that. So as the account owner, I want to display overview of the account once logged in. That's a user story. As the account owner, I want to see the total funds available so I can understand my financial position. So we're very explicit as to what the user story is going to address. And you can see there are several other user stories identified here as well. Now, if I go back to the product vision, you could take each one of those user stories and tie it right back in to the product vision itself. So we create the product backlog. Product backlog. That product backlog has the user story in it. You could also include a summary description, and it definitely is going to be prioritized. Once we have created this backlog, we set a priority for each user stories. The team always works on the highest priority items. Number one would be at the top. We work on number one item. If I need more work to do, I go to the next one, number two, number three, number four, and so forth. So again, that's where the generalist comes into play. If I have generalists that are doing this work, they can easily pick up other user stories and start working on them. So here are the stories as they appear in that product backlog. And you can see I have prioritized what will give the customer the most value the soonest. That is our objective here. What will give the customer the most value the soonest. Okay, so those have been listed then into my product backlog. All right, so now my next objective is going to be to develop the release plan. The release plan. Now, this particular release plan shows sprints or iterations, and there are several listed here. It also shows that several teams can be working on this same project at the same time. So each one of these would have a description of the sprint and what is going to be released as a result of that sprint or that iteration. Here's a pictorial view of a release plan. So we developed, first of all, our product vision. Now, the product vision is going to drive the product roadmap. The product roadmap is a plan of action, okay? Plan of action for how a product or a solution will evolve over time. So we take that product roadmap and we then create our release plans right here. This particular project has 3 releases. Now, for each release, I will have iterations associated with each release. So this release plan is going to come from the product backlog, and then I will create individual iterations that will support that product backlog, or in this case, that release. Then I have iteration 0. We talked about earlier a iteration planning session, okay? So iteration planning session, this is where we plan the releases. In other words, I'm going to plan what stories will be in each of these iterations. I'm also going to plan the length of time that it will take to complete each one of these iterations. You may also see what we call a iteration H. Iteration H is a hardening iteration. That is where we would do the testing and validations and things such as that. So each iteration then is broken down into features. You can see we have several features associated with iteration 1. Each feature is based on a user story, and then we define that user story down to the individual tasks that will be completed. We have assigned hours to that individual task that will be completed. Now follow this. Okay. For the features to be completed, all the tasks have to be completed. For the iteration to be completed, all of the features for that iteration have to be completed. For the release to be completed, all of the iterations associated with that release have to be completed. So that is our release plan. That is how we plan the release of the deliverable. Several methods, bunches. As I said earlier, there are 50 different methods plus of agile methods that can be used. 50 plus. A lot of agile methods out there, and people use those as to what fits them best. Now, PMI came up with a novel idea, and they purchased this actually, and it's called Disciplined Agile. Now, Disciplined Agile is not a method, it's a toolkit. And in that toolkit, you develop your way of working. All right, so I can pull from Scrum, I can pull tools from Kanban, from Lean, from XP, from FDD, from DSDM. I pull tools from each one of those and I combine them into my method on how I'm going to be conducting my agile projects. It is a toolkit rather than a method such as some of the others are. We determine what we're going to use and we use it basically. Now, I want to illustrate an agile flowchart that we've just talked about. First of all, we create the project vision, the vision statement. Then we create the product backlog. We do that in a product vision meeting. Then I plan the release, that release plan that we just looked at. When, how many iterations there will be, when I'll be releasing those iterations. Then I break that product backlog down into sprints or iterations. And I establish the length of each sprint or each iteration. This is done in the sprint planning meeting. And I'm also creating deliverables daily. Okay? So every time I finish a sprint, I am creating and I'm delivering a deliverable. So now we move on to accepted deliverables, the sprint review meeting. That's where we demo the deliverable. That's where the deliverable will be accepted by the customer. Once it's been accepted, we will do what we call a retrospective. Lessons learned, Kanban, continuous improvement. That's what we do in this retrospective. What can I do to improve my next iteration? So I will take a couple of those items and I will incorporate those right back into my product backlog, into my iterations, and this cycle will go on continuously until we've satisfied all of the requirements that have been identified in that product backlog. Kanban, of course, Kanban is a very effective where we show the work that's to be done, the work that's being worked on, and then those things that are done. And then feature-driven development is another method. And FDD encourages reporting at all levels, and it helps us track the progress and results. And it allows the team to update the project regularly and identify errors and problems quickly. All right, we have what's called information radiator. In a predictive traditional type of project, we have a report. It's called work performance report. That tells us how the project is progressing. In Agile, we don't have that. We have an information radiator. This information radiator is going to be posted. Maybe it's on a whiteboard in a hallway or in the room where you're working at. Maybe it's an electronic board, but everything about the project's progress is posted in that information radiator. For example, the Burndown charts, Burnup charts, velocity charts, cycle time. Your backlogs can be posted there. Your risk list can be posted there. All sorts of things can be posted in this information radiator. And people can very easily see how the project is progressing by reviewing that information radiator, whether it be electronic or a physical board of some type. Story points, we talked about that. This is a burn-up chart. We have a plan. We plan to complete 35 different stories in 10 days. This shows us our progress here. Now, this can be used to measure iterations also. In this case, we're doing stories, but you can use it to measure iterations. And then this shows story points that have not been completed. This is a Burndown chart. The dashed line is the plan. The solid line is the actual results. Once again, story points could be iterations. Let's take one more look at agile versus traditional. In a traditional predictive environment, and this is also called waterfall, we have a detailed plan for our schedule, we have a detailed plan for our cost, and we have our scope, which is fixed. Our scope is fixed. But in Agile, we have what's called an inverted triangle. In Agile, the schedule is fixed, the cost is fixed, you have 1, 6, 8 week iterations, and you have a cost, either a periodic budget where you can spend X amount of dollars a month or a year or whatever, or you might have a cost associated with each iteration. But look at the scope. The scope is done iteratively. We have a vision, but we don't know exactly where this project is going to end up at. Take a target, for example, a bullseye. In a traditional approach, that bullseye is well defined. I know where I'm going. But in an agile approach, it's blurred. I don't see the lines. I see the transition of the colors, but I don't see the lines. It's very blurred. But as I move closer and closer into that target, that bullseye starts to develop and becomes more evident through the definition of done. What are agile methods used for? They're used in software projects. That's where it was developed at. But since in IT projects, and since that time it's moved and is being used now in knowledge projects. You're writing a course, you're writing a book, anything like that. Agile is a good approach for that. Even building projects. Sometimes building a building, we supplement it with Agile. Of course, that becomes a hybrid project then. Complex projects. We just don't know a lot about it, and we're going to develop it as we move forward. Complex projects. There are really many applications of Agile. Now, this next chart I'm going to talk about an Agile method that I did. Several years ago, I decided I was going to start building some furniture. I had never done it before, and I knew some of the tools I needed, so I built my shop in an Agile method. As I realized I needed something new, something different, I started adding to my shop. Well, I got to the point that I just finished up on a chest of drawers that I built for my grandson. So I had a project in mind, okay? I had my vision. I had my product vision. I had my user stories, and I had my backlog. I knew what I wanted, okay, to develop. So my first iteration was to choose the wood. Now, I like oak, white oak, and that's what I build on, basically, is white oak. But you can see I buy that white oak in its rough form. Okay, it's not even planed at all, it's just sawed lumber. So the first iteration was to select the material. I needed various thicknesses to start with, And so I selected the material and perhaps I cut it into a rough length. At the end of that iteration, I looked back over it and I reviewed it and I determined what I might improve in the next iteration. So I come into the next iteration. Now in this next iteration, what I did was I had to saw it to length. I had to actually glue it together, plane it, and I had to saw it to the width that I needed. So that would have been iteration number 2, prepare the material, and that's what I did there. I did a retrospective. What can I do to improve that? What can I do to improve in future iterations? So in a future iteration, I now took what I had sawed to size, what I had planed and got ready for assembly, and I added the detail to it. I added some fancy edging to it and some things like that. And perhaps I did some light sanding on it at that point in time. So I added design detail to my project. At the end of that, I did a retrospective. When I was actually adding that edge, I had not edged it properly, so I had to redo some of that. I had to do some rework on that. And I declared then what I was going to do in the next iteration to improve that so that didn't happen again. So iteration number 4, I assembled it. I started putting the pieces together and I assembled it. At the assembly, I retrospect. What can I do to improve the next iteration? Then I moved on to the next iteration, number 5. And iteration number 5, I added some details to it. Okay, I modified some assemblies, forms on it, and some different things such as that. Once again, I did a retrospective. Now there were a lot of other steps that took place, building the drawers and putting the back on and all these types of things that took place. But I ended up in iteration number 6, and in iteration number 6, I had the finished product. I had met the definition of done, and the project was declared to be complete. If you look online, did some queries online, for example, you will find that Agile has been used even to build an automobile. Agile is used in many, many different methods, and that's what it's all about. I did a project retrospective and looked back over the whole project to capture information that I can apply in future projects. How do we manage projects? And I would have to say to you that I don't know that I have ever worked a true predictive type project. My projects have always been hybrid. I just didn't know what it was called, okay? Bottom line, I didn't know it was called hybrid projects. I didn't know it included Agile because I didn't know what Agile was. But basically the way we start off a project is we have the funding for the project. We establish the business documents, project vision, and so forth. We initiate the project charter. Every project, including Agile, needs a project charter. So we do that. Then we go on and we start planning a project. This will be a predictive type of project. Once we have enough planning done, we will start executing that project. We call this progressive elaboration. Progressive elaboration says, as I learn more about my project, I add it to the plan. and I update the documents. So we start executing. So this will continue, planning, executing. Once we have a plan and we're executing, we will monitor and control the project to make sure it's staying on track. And this will be a continuous process until we have completed the project. We have the deliverable has been accepted. Then we transfer it to the end user and we finalize all the reports, documentation, and everything, and file that information away. That is a true picture of how we manage projects today. We teach project management classes. Coming classes are listed here. Appreciate your feedback, and let me know if I can be of any assistance to you in the future. I do have another seminar coming up on August the 22nd, and this is going to be Introduction to Traditional Predictive Waterfall Type of Project Management. That's on August the 22nd. It's on my website. It's also posted on Eventbrite. So if you want to attend that, be sure to sign up for it. Questions or anything, feel free to contact me.